doesn't stop, does he?
No, he doesn't. This is why this man should be a lawyer. Now let me direct your train of thought over to where I wanted to win the case. Thank you.
Can I have some of this?
Of course you can have that ice.
Well, the last thing I was saying to Shagufta was this guy Segmeister who said he took 1 year sabbatical every 7 years rather than waiting to the end of his life to retire and enjoy life.
Right.
So I thought that was an interesting idea.
That was in Pink, right? Where he talked about that.
Yeah. That guy's got a TED Talk too.
Oh, he does? Oh, get out.
But yeah, I've just never understood this idea of waiting to do the things that you want to do. And I remember when I graduated, somebody said to me, it's like, well, maybe you should put your dream on hold and then like work a job. Like there is a level of practicality. Like if you're going to be a filmmaker, you can't just say, well, I want to go be a filmmaker. Like you have to go to school. You have to have money to go to school. You have to do certain practical things. But this is...
Do you know Pietro Sanitate?
Yes.
He's a volunteer astronaut.
He is a volunteer astronaut.
That's cool.
That's what he says he is. As soon as they
What
need
is a
one, he's ready to volunteer.
I guess he's always training, and then the moment they need him. But it's like, yeah, you do have to be prepared.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just like this, like, oh, I'm living in a dream, and then hopefully I'll get picked up. This guy, Patrick Dodson, who I told you about, he said there's a difference between going to Hollywood
Yeah.
and being like, oh, I'm going to wait tables and hope to get a big break. And going to Hollywood, waiting tables, and after waiting tables, going and saying, okay, I'm finding people who are making films. I'm looking for scripts. I'm getting together with other actors and honing my craft. Like if you're waiting for your break to come, like somebody's just going to discover you as you're serving them coffee and like, oh, I'm in the movies. Like you're going to wait forever because there's thousands of actors condensed in the same area trying to do exactly what you're doing. And why haven't you gotten discovered yet? So I think that gets back to the
Oh, it's delightful. I'm just listening.
the idea of I mean, this is getting a little bit away from rest and work, but still connected. But the idea of, you know, like the GarageBand, the YouTube, the iMovie that everybody has now on their computer.
What's FaceTime?
FaceTime.
Sorry, I have it on my computer. I don't know it.
I'm not sure what it is.
It's like Skype,
Oh,
but for phones.
thank you.
That's very fancy.
But yeah, the fact that everyone now is allowed to create, putting us on equal playing field. So it's like, I mean, you can relate that back to identity. You can relate that about, you know,
It's going to be excellent.
related to rest and work as far as when you are in control of your own life, as Daniel Pink says, self-directed, then you are able to set the schedule that you desire. But everyone thinks that once you're born into the world, you automatically have to like be routed into a certain work 9 to 5. Like everybody has a 9 to 5 mentality just because that's what you typically do. You graduate, you get a 9 to 5 job. It's like,
You find out that's your
What's the
boring.
difference between career and vocation?
yeah. Or yeah, life purpose. Like people are getting a job when they should be thinking about a life's purpose.
You know what I found interesting? Oh no, I think I spilled something.
I don't
It's
see
also
it.
because we
I
make
don't
things
see
very
it.
instrumental.
It's probably very
So,
beautiful and artistic.
When, for example, I
Oh,
argue
Millie
that
thought she
the
spilled
idea
something on
of
herself. I just
capitalism is just being something where you
This
fuck
is
better
so
and
delicious.
you're not
Like,
fully
making
morally
it
fulfilling
taste
yourself
like
if you're just working something
so
that's totally
good.
unrelated,
incredible.
totally unrelated,
Yeah.
purely functional. It's like, oh,
Absolutely.
if you're working
Some
for your
ice, some
family,
white ice, it's really
well,
tasty too.
sure, but you can't just make one aspect of yourself instrumental to the other.
Yeah.
You have to be engaging all of your things
Exactly.
on their own terms.
Okay. Can
Yes.
I say marriage? I was just gonna say I was with the couple who has worked for Sam for a while, South American missions, and the husband was a field director in Colombia, and Ruth Ann pretty much, you know, she served alongside of him,
Right.
and you know, they're going to be retiring soon, but like retiring, it's just funny, like,
The
oh,
term.
you were
The
like,
term.
if you've been carrying out this mission, they call it the mission. But to retire from it, I understand, like, retire officially from that position, but they're always still doing that work, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think that term is just, I don't want to be, I want to be able to do what I'm passionate about my whole life. And, that's, praise God, that's a really deep, rich, fulfilling purpose in Christ. But, I don't know, this idea of, like, retiring, even, like, in the missions where, we're going to retire, sure, maybe from, like officially, but you're not,
Well, no, it's very fair. We were.
Mr. Penny, get some food?
Please get some food, Mr. Penny. It's delightful.
It's so
You'll love
delicious.
it. There's just vegetables if you prefer. I know you
Well,
don't like meat.
I'm just telling off from
I understand, but please do. I mean, the idea of retirement. For one, no human being enjoys their situation if they divide their rest from their work, and also if their rest doesn't lead to a work. So the idea of a retirement where you rest but it doesn't lead you to a work is very problematic for many people. They get very bored very quickly and want to go volunteer somewhere and do something else. The human isn't designed, as we're talking about, God did not design humans to work here and then rest here and then they're apart. The rest informs your work informs your rest. Like when you're doing something that the Lord is calling you to do, you actually get rest from that work. There's a kind of joy that comes out of that. I think in many respects what's happened, as Mr. Finney alluded to, is a capitalistic notion that you work for this number of years and you work these days, 9 to 5, and then you rest at the end of it, and that's again separating your work from your rest, and then at the end of it, you'll be allowed to do everything you want to do. But interestingly, the people who have made the biggest contributions to, the prosperity of the nation are the ones who did what they did because they loved it. They were innovators. Innovators always are internally motivated. Your Zuckerberg, your Gates, what have you.
possibly very unhelpfully so.
Well, perhaps. Very
Would you
much
say
so.
that? Why would you say that?
I mean, so for example, John Rockefeller was someone who did many, many great things, but who worked himself to the bone and then would spend 3 months on a yacht. And I mean, I don't like making blanket assertions about innovators because, again, I don't really buy the concept of the innovator. I think that everything is very piecemeal. And most innovations and most business is done by a million small things rather than directors.
Of a large thing, you would say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy the great man theory, I guess, in that sense.
Oh, well, I mean, for one, there's a problem in the idea of the great man if you've sort of situated where there are given individuals who have a special spark that do something that no one else can do. I think all human beings who are made in the image of God can most certainly do great things. They're made to do unbelievably great things.
But I think that at the same time, sorry, don't mean to cut
No,
you
no.
off, but don't you think that there's something about like the way humans work in terms of recognizing a name? Like, I know you as Bernard, not, part of mankind. You know what I'm saying? And when you have like a name that comes up as, so let's just say Mark Zuckerberg, for example. Like, okay, so you can ascribe him to Mark Zuckerberg, right? Never met him, but you could now have suddenly these ideas about who he is and what he came up with. But you can't know, you can't sort of just, how do you esteem, like, I mean, maybe it's just the nature, like, maybe man's tries to compartmentalize things, but it's sort of like, it's much harder to esteem list names, of like these people who did all of that. I mean, not that I'm saying one shouldn't esteem the workers who do the labor that often isn't necessarily like, their name alone won't stand for that project. I mean, there are many other people, not just Mark Zuckerberg, who went into this, who went into Facebook, for example, I mean, but I think like man's tendency is to sort of, you see another man by their name. So that might be why one might fall into the trap of esteeming only that one person instead of all the other people who also went into doing that work. I mean, I think, does that make any sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. I guess I'd rephrase what I mean to say that thinking particularly of innovation, it's not just rather than just being about work. It's about the fact that it's more, actually it's not even just about, it's not really about people, it's about the nature of progress or discovery such as that takes place, and I tend to think that that's incremental where we have a very arbitrarily chosen way of looking back on things.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
have a heroic notion of
That is-
a
yeah.
heroic notion of science, a heroic notion of industry,
Mm-hmm.
and as such we look for heroes rather than a communal notion of science, or a cooperative notion.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
No, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, you could even say, even ascribing to the great man theory, you'd have to say all great men stand upon the shoulders of the giants that come before them. And there's a community, even a communal sense in that way as well. No innovation takes place, but relative to the innovation that takes way before it, it's part of sort of a story that goes on. And your community also decides sort of the nature of the environment. The nature of the environment by which these innovators and what have you are working in to contribute toward the bigger picture. However, I would assert that the individuals within that community that sort of come up with the idea are ones who do it because they love it, because it is intrinsically motivated. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't
love it. I mean, I think people do things for all kinds of reasons, and a lot of the time people do things because they have odd psychological complexes that demand that they work. Most artists, in that sense, don't don't work because they want to, but because there's something driving them to do so. And that's not necessarily very healthy. It's a sort of fevered aspect of creativity, and I think that applies to a lot of industry too. A lot of the time, people like Rockefeller or Steve Jobs are the people who do things not because they love it, but because they are willing to privilege it above all other things.
Oh, well, that's very fair. I mean, earlier we sort of brought in the word passion, and we talked about this distinction between the idea of passion both means something you're intrinsically motivated toward, and yet it also entails suffering. I mean, in the sort of working toward a goal, there is suffering, but the suffering sort of contributes toward like an investment toward a greater joy. Like you use the word passion to sort of describe Jesus dying on the cross, because it both refers to sort of the intrinsic motivation of going to this, but also because it points beyond the suffering toward a greater joy that will justify all that sort of come before it. And yes, it is true that you have people that work in a maddening way, but the reason they work in that maddening way is because they believe in something that they're working toward that once realized will justify it all.
I think that assumes too much. I think that assumes too much of people. I think people can just do things because people are unhealthy. I think people can. I mean, I don't think that Rockefeller was working towards anything. From all I've read of the man, he worked because he didn't know how to do anything else. I mean, it's being stuck in motion, not a passion for the work, but a drive, ceaseless and unmerciful.
You should read. I got this book upstairs. You might be interested. It's Creativity, and he's exploring where does creativity come from, and he's kind of going where you are. He's like, even though there's all these individuals that we kind of triumph, or I should champion, that it's without like the domain of community, without the domain of the world at large. He's saying like it doesn't exist in a vacuum, basically. And then, have you watched that TED Talk by Elizabeth Gilbert where she talks about nurturing creativity? So she basically says, the Greeks had this concept that whoever was the writer, the scientist, had a house. And everybody understood that in the walls of that house lived a genius. And so if you happened to live in that house, you just were lucky enough to have the muse, which then inspired you to create this great work. So she said we've gone from this idea that genius comes through us, that genius comes from within us. So she makes the point, and that's why you have all these mad people, because they write this great novel, and then everybody's like, oh, aren't you so afraid that you write this novel and you're not going to be able to live up to the next one? And then they get to drugs and depression because they're like, yeah, I'm really afraid. So she was basically saying the reason people used to watch somebody dance, they used to say ole. They said when somebody would have this transcendent moment of dance, they would it was a recognition that is God taking over that person. So they would say Allah, Allah, which got transformed to ole, ole. So, I mean, there's some of that, but I also think, Anya. But I think, I think the idea of the individual, I mean, I think it has a place, as far as, I mean, if you think about the head, like our heads on our body, the heads get a lot of recognition because they're the ones doing the most interacting with people. They're the mouth, the eyes, they're the ones who channel all the information to the rest of the body.
Boring event.
But without the body, like that head would be meaningless. It's like, what are you controlling if you don't have a body? But I think there is
That's sad.
a notion to the fact that there are certain individuals who are willing to work harder than the rest of the group. Like there's some people who are like, oh yeah, that's great, yeah, sure, I like, Facebook, but they're not going to spend the time 16 hours a day like writing the code to make it work. They'll like the benefits from it. So I think there is something to the individuals who are willing to like personally sacrifice.
Oh no, certainly.
Well, I have a question. What do you take away then from the Rockefeller figure who, was, merciless and just worked hard for the, working hard sake?
That creativity is a form of madness.
Yes, definitely.
And that should encourage us to believe that there's plenty good in madness, in good forms of madness, but I guess it's the same thing I always believe, which is that it's a call to moderation in all things. And
Even
that's
a,
what
even a call to moderation and creativity?
I think so. Because creativity is not the only virtue. There's stasis has its virtues.
Right.
And I guess that's the fundamental thing I believe in, placing things in balance, because creativity ultimately depends upon dissatisfaction with what is, and plenty that is dissatisfying, but ultimately there's huge elements of human experience that simply aren't accessible if all you are is attempting to create something new.
Well,
So
what if in one state of rest they're creating? Like, what about if rest and stasis and synthesis weren't so far apart? Kind of like, I don't know, but I just hard to get it on. I wonder if in one state of rest they're more able to create almost. I'm not trying to say that they're the same thing, but what I'm saying is that there's somehow a way in which they work together. I mean, I guess this is what you're saying about moderation, right?
Okay, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's about having
Can I? Oh, sorry, Lizzie. Can I have my glass back? I just want some more water before I have coffee. Thank you so much. Sorry, Mr. Finney. What's that?
Oh, no, I mean, it's just about ensuring that you're giving due balance in a human life to the various contradictory things that make it up. And what I find problematic about a culture that values nothing besides creativity is that it has no way of valuing what it already has, except instrumentally. It becomes addicted to the notion of progress. So progress gives history meaning only insofar as history is able to lead to the wonderful things that we are now and the wonderful things that we have now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when we were upstairs, we kind of had this phase where we talked about the idea that if you're too much embedded into your creative work, then you're actually doing it very much wrong. Likewise, if you're too embedded on rest, you become lazy, but if you don't do any work, if you do too much work, though, you just sort of burn yourself out. And we kind of discussed this idea of all these sort of syntheses that have to take place. Also, in the idea of creativity, if one devalues the family around them, they actually destroy their creativity. I found people, for example, who don't read books because they're afraid that their voice will be tampered by other artists and sort of refuse to take place in the great conversation that is literature, write terrible things. So I would say, creativity that doesn't participate in its community or disvalues the community around it is very poor and very bad.
You couldn't create though without having respect for what's before you.
You're right, but a lot of people think that if they sort of tap into that, it will tarnish them. I mean, for one, there is no Mark Zuckerberg if there's no internet. If there's really, he's in a community where he's able to do those sort of things, or all these other factors that contribute to it. So I don't. So
how much memory is there now of? How much popular memory is there now of the early days of the internet? And I mean of the cultural markers of the early internet. Mm-hmm. I mean, who remembers the first search engines?
Sisters?
For example.
I mean, among the computer science community, there's constantly documentaries being made about the history of Linux, the history of
Yeah,
original
but you're
search
geeks. No, and I mean that in the same. I think you understand the sense in which I mean that. I mean it
Geeks are
is.
people who are passionate about really specific things.
Yeah, and so, but whereas if you compare that to the slow pace of progress of say literature, you can look back and there isn't a period of literature that people just forget. And the thing is that it's the addiction to modernity, which, and it is very possible to be creative while displacing everything before. I tend to think that it produces very bad things, but they're not bad things if you like modernity.
Well, then, I see your point. You're right, and that's problematic. That actually, what you just sort of listed out as my greatest problem with postmodern movements and modernist movements is they tend to consume themselves almost in sort of a carnivalism. They kind of destroy the food of their history, which would feed them and nourish them, and sort of turn on themselves and destroy themselves. Very fair critique.
I don't know if they destroy themselves. They just divorce themselves from everything around them, and as such they leave themselves open to the mistakes that history would.
Oh yeah, well that is a key characteristic of a lot of the mistakes that history makes, and a lot of the sort of great men who cause horrible problems for everyone, no doubt. I think, because Mr. Hankins did reference the Gilbert video and sort of this idea, actually the idea of the genius is what is really, really bad. Like when you think you're the source of all your greatness, when after you write Ulysses and all you can produce is sort of a Finnegan Wake, which some would argue, like Beckett would say, is wonderful, you just sort of go mad, and a lot of your audience go to the starving artist and the killing themselves sort of idea. So actually it's the believing that your genius comes from your community or an outside source that keeps you from falling into that trap. And I guess what I mean with the idea that you turn and consume yourself is the idea. I really just sort of emphasizing the idea that you don't necessarily destroy yourself, but you most certainly destroy your creativity. You most certainly destroy your joy. And I think that's sort of the arching principle. You know, we talk about creativity as a kind of madness. Well, that's fair. It is a kind of madness. It's sort of the question of in what way can you approach this madness and have joy.
Okay, to rephrase then, it's Dionysus.
Yes, yes.
And as such, to be corralled and treated with kid gloves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the word I was looking for actually.
That's wonderful. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the other thing that you have to think about, well, yeah, like I could see, like, okay, so like for instance Facebook, where there's this like balance that you have to ride between not becoming dead
And money.
and also not becoming overworked, because you have like Facebook, and every week it's like, oh, we got to change this, you know, we got to update this, like, oh, we got timeline, now we got this thing on the side, now we got this and this. Like it's like, where is this line between trying to keep up with what's current versus versus like losing who you are in the process, because you can get swallowed up in that, like, oh man, if we don't keep it up to date, people are gonna be like, Facebook is not cool, so we got like you're saying, it's like we have to outdo ourselves. But it's the problem is like when you're outdoing yourself for the sake of someone else. Like if you're just like sitting there and it's like, man, I'm tired of this Facebook, I want to update the look because we've had the same thing for 10 years. Like if you're doing that
I
because
refuse to get timeline. Just kidding.
yeah, I'm not probably
I
gonna get
did
it
too,
either.
but I accidentally got it and now I regret it. I mean,
They're going to force us all.
Yeah. But it's just this idea.
Seen Brazil?
It's like because in there you have
That's a
this
great film.
It's a great movie.
I love that film.
Brazil, excellent.
Brazil's
movie.
amazing.
It's sort of a dystopian government takeover film, but it's excellent because
It's amazing. It's about an entirely bureaucratic world.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. It's like A Wonderful Life, but in reverse.
De Niro is so awesome in that. But Robert De Niro plays a vigilante plumber who operates totally unsanctioned by the governing authorities, fixing things,
Brilliant.
and as such is constantly being pursued by the what's the word? Being pursued by the authorities.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, you have this because so I can see what you're saying. It's like, because sometimes I see technology come out and I'm like, well, what is the purpose of this? Like now we're on our phone and we can web surf while like eating jelly beans. It's like there is this sense of keeping up with technology for the sake of technology,
Right,
just to
right,
look
right,
cool.
right,
Just
Did you ever read The Oatmeal? No, it's very funny webcomic. There's one really funny one to people talking about their smartphones, and no, they're talking. It's the whole comic is all about just people. Of this comic is all about people. About how technology becomes uncool so fast.
I see.
Yeah.
And then he goes like, "I'm waiting for the one that'll raise my children for me."
I see. Well, I see now what you kind of mean when you talk about innovation just being part of the system. I mean, there almost is a distinction between innovation that creates value and innovation that just adds stuff.
Yeah, there's like bells and whistles, which is incremental and it doesn't really make a difference.
Right.
And then you
No,
have
that's very
the
fair.
revolutionary changes.
Innovation never creates value. It just it just lifts
there's-
it sifts the dirt. It sifts the dirt that's covering it off.
Shifts the dirt.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like, are you innovating? Because I remember one time we were in architecture class and he was showing us
It pulls it back up from the mire. Sorry, I just.
I think it
realized-
creates value. It depends on what
Waiting
you're
on
talking about
me.
when you say value.
Right.
It does create value. And so think about Facebook, think about emails, think about words that people spit out and their
Right, it wasn't
status.
there before.
Oh,
so
exactly. It has to. It is creating something. You know,
That
it's
is
creating
great.
something. With
Okay.
it.
It's creating something, but I think the forms of value never change, and they all consist of other people.
Right.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna get some right now.
absolutely.
But I mean, like I was saying, like, so we had this architecture thing where it was like this motion sensor wall or something. Like, as you walk past the wall, it moved. And it was like, the professor seemed very taken by it, and I was like, well, yeah, that's cool, but like, what is it going to be used for? I mean, I guess there's this level of, there's this timeline of when technology is just kind of in its baby stage, where it's like, oh, we don't know what this means yet, but it could be something great. And it's like, you have to kind of stay with that. But then if you just stay with that too long, it becomes this innovation, like you're saying, for innovation's sake. It was like, man, look at this new, like I felt like some kids were talking yesterday, like, oh, guess what? Now you can do this with this app that lets you plug into this app to this app. And it's like technology for face value because it looks cool. Like, it looks cooler and it plugs into the last thing. Now you can be anywhere in the world talking with somebody on the phone while you're sending an email, while you're
Right.
listening to an MP3. Like, everything is the desire to be integrated in a phone, but not with your life.
Well, it's like, have
Right.
you ever seen those things where you can basically, it's a, what is it?
taking you more away from the present. when
A
you're doing
switch, I
it.
guess. You can like tap it, so like you have your phone and your iPod and your, I don't know, I'm bad with technology.
Dog.
Yeah, your dog.
Your Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchis. Okay, anyway, and so like when you're finished, you want to like
So
switch to
many
your phone.
Tamagotchis
You
on
tap,
one
you just
thing.
like tap your chest. And switch to the next thing. You have this like earpiece in, and I don't know. It's
My
so bizarre.
Tamagotchi likes to eat peanut
See,
butter.
and that's where you can get into trouble as far as like the work versus rest thing, where you're constantly trying to keep up with this innovation,
Right,
and
right.
your identity is wrapped up in that, and
Right.
you're scared like, oh man, freaking Google's like
Right,
up now,
right,
I got to be
right.
up, and so Facebook,
I guess you know, Mr. Finney, and maybe it's not a fair point, but in my mind, of an individual who does something because they love it, if they innovate, which I would argue they're probable to do it, are not going to innovate in a way that's just another whistle or bell on something. I would argue it has a much higher likelihood of being something that really creates
Yeah, I
value.
like this, but people are awful.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good point. And I guess what Bernard and I on tonight's evening, the theme.
I just want to rain on everyone's parade.
No, please do. We like it because our parade is waterproof, and the more water that comes on it, the more we can use to make more of Bernard's
we'll
wonderful
innovate a
drink.
raincoat that you will hate, but will dispel your points.
Somebody doesn't hate creativity.
At this point, I'm willing to just embrace Luddism. We should all go back to farms.
Farms are great. I live on one.
You
No
like
specifics.
this book too.
That's a great book. It's a brilliant book.
Yes, thank
It's a
you.
brilliant book.
You have a dinosaur on your shirt.
Whoa.
I think it's a fox.
I think it's fox, but it's a dinosaur fox.
It's a horse.
I
Good
saw this
dinosaur.
I saw so much roadkill today. I'm sorry, I won't bring it up because we're eating, but it was really
No.
blew me away.
When I went up to the mountains this weekend, we saw bears.
You went to the mountains? I saw a bear carpet.
A
It's
bear
I don't
carpet?
feel comfortable on this thing right now.
A
Its
bear
head was
carpet.
still on.
Right.
It was like laying with its head.
Mommy,
there.
isn't it tasty?
It's
So
amazing.
good.
Anne Marie is amazing.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Thank
It's
you.
absolutely wonderful.
Hey Daniel,
yes,
can you
ma'am.
bring your? Oh, never mind. You haven't finished
I,
eating.
it's just so good.
Wait, what date is it, sir?
It's the 28th. Tomorrow's
Happy
leap
birthday.
year. This is why we're eating.
I didn't realize.
That's why we're congregated. There's
That's why there's that amazing cake over there.
See, if you had that Facebook innovation, it would have reminded you Daniel
Daniel
Garner's
Garner's
birthday.
No, it's not.
But you want to live in the past, Penny. So not remember people's birthdays.
His birthday is not publicly available on Facebook. That's why only the people that actually know his birthday can wish him.
I
Which
don't.
is good because
I
the
don't-
I knew his birthday. I just didn't know what day. What
Oh, no,
day today
there
was.
wasn't a personal attack on you.
I should know what today was. I remember your birthday. I just
I
know
did
it was
not-
today.
It was not a test.
I knew that his
It was not
birthday
a
was the
challenge.
28th. I just didn't know that today was the 28th.
I do that happens to me all the time.
Yeah,
It was not a challenge. I did not realize. I'm actually scared to log onto that thing. I'll log on. There's gonna be 10,000 messages, 10,000 people who
Face
are
your
like,
fears,
"Hey, I should face my fears, shouldn't I? I should log onto that bad boy."
Probably like 800
Otherwise you'll
photography
feel
jobs.
There's probably like 800 photography jobs. They're like, "Hey, you're gonna work for National Geographic, and you don't even have to do any additional work. We're just gonna take the photographs you already have done." And it was like 2009. I'm like, oh man. And they actually sent one every year.
yeah. No, they have like expiration. Like you can let us know by
It was sent in.
February 27th.
It was sent in 2009. It says expiration date February 27, 2012.
No, or whatever date is the day
going
before.
to end this.
That's what we said. So there's
No, but like whatever that day would
Okay.
be, you know.
That's what I said. There's a
hypothetically.
Qdoba coupon, and it's expired on whatever day Justine and I went, but they took it because it was like the day it expired that day.
Excellent.
You know what I mean?
Excellent.
Does that make sense?
Excellent. I just add a renew date under the expiration date if it's on, say, renewed today, and hand it to them and be like, I got it renewed.
That's right. I was a little distracted, but see, the thing is with a coupon, I thought that expired by that date means like that day. You
Is
can't use it,
the
right?
day.
It's done, you know? But no, they were like, yeah, whatever.
They tend to explode once you can't use them anymore. Like they dissolve in your hand. Your reaching will turn to ashes, just like that.
Coupons are funny things. You know what else is funny? When people try to put barcodes over top of other barcodes and get things that are $135 for $35.
People do that. That's
People
really
do
crazy.
that. They've done it for people when I was working.
That show is so great.
It was bad. I felt really bad. I just didn't know the merchandise very well.
There's
There's
this-
people working at Home Depot.
There was this one point where they bought $1,000 worth of things, and then the store had to pay them.
Why?
They actually had
Why?
to pay them like 23
Why?
cents or something. And this was like,
Because they had
oh
so
my
many
God, how
coupons?
coupons so well.
Oh, coupon. Oh, I
Oh,
see.
my,
Gotcha.
my grandmother used to have a friend, Ruby, Miss Clark. She lived next door, and she was into the coupon stuff. She would bring home, you know,
Your
just
grandma? Bima?
no, her neighbor.
Bima's
No, Ruby's
These
neighbor. Her neighbor would bring home like
Some woman's neighbor.
20 cans of coffee that she got for free. I mean, it was extraordinary. The coupon sort of stuff that people
My mommy
do.
had the best cataloging system for her.
Americans say
coupons
coupon.
ever.
They don't say coupon, they say
And She
coupon.
had the box.
Coupon.
She had the box.
Do you have
She
any
had a filing
gray
system. She had a filing
coupon?
system for coupons. Oh, well, see, this is what
I'm
I'm
just saying it
talking
how it's said.
Gray Pupon. That's what I'm gonna say. Gray Pupon. Do you have any Gray Pupon?
about. I think it's neat.
Stop hating on us Americans, Finny.
Oh, go sleep. I'll have to write this up.
Shout out. I don't know
Well,
if
yeah,
you
man,
have
I should
any
have
reach
that.
remover.
You should definitely get at least some of this cake.
Yeah.
White bar soap.
Yeah, you have this other.
If you want to have meat for the first time ever,
Awesome.
you should have this meat because it's super tasty.
It's really good.
No, I will. I'm waiting.
Okay, you have this other interesting thing about creativity where it's like creativity itself is somewhat superfluous. You know, you don't need creativity. So there you reach this kind of like pinnacle where it's like you innovate and there's a creativity and you can
aren't
leave it
taking that
there
home,
and it
right?
becomes
Great.
kind of
Glad we talked.
like,
about
oh, this is cool, but what do we
it.
really,
Excellent.
it's like this is cool, but what do we really need it for?
Negotiations.
Like you don't
I
need
would get
creativity, and
another
that's why
cake.
it's cool. That's
If I
why
get a
art
third, I'll
is
be like,
fun because you don't need it. You make it because you
I need to
want
make
it.
room for the whole.
So it's like yeah, there is
That's
this
the problem.
very slippery slope
Make it
where you develop a product
wonderful.
and it can go from like, oh wow, this is really going to enrich our lives to just.
Absolutely wonderful.
I mean, it does kind of enrich your life in a sense that
Amen. Yes, ma'am.
the
Absolutely.
non-necessity of it is enriching your life. You know what I'm saying?
And you know, to the idea, if one's sort
Unlike
of,
the city of Adimantus.
That was a fancy reference that I cannot connect. What is that?
Oh no, the first city that Plato constructs in the Republic is the city of
You
utmost
can
necessity.
pronounce the words and stuff. I
No,
can't
the
quite
city of
do
utmost.
that.
The first one is the city of utmost necessity, which is where nothing besides what is necessary. It's just a community of farmers and artisans.
Oh, okay.
And then Glaucon says, no, they must have relish to their meats, and so we need all of these fancy things. And that's when you need war, because you have to you have to capture more land, and you have to have loads of.
Happy birthday.
Right in the middle of the statement. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday, dear Daniel. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip, hooray!
Yay! My dream came true. I'm with all of you wonderful people. That's twice in one day my wishes have come true.
That's twice I have you being sung birthday on the recorder. So in the Adamantes, happy birthday.
Plato's Republic. Happy birthday. What was I going to say?
That was not intended to cut off your
No,
point.
It was very intended to get off your points. He's
He planned that.
Aristotelian.
Right when Finney's about to win the debate, you all start with the cake.
That was my plan. I'm like, no. It's sort of like phone a friend from Millionaire, but bring in a cake. Distract the questioner.
Bring a cake. I have another lifeline. Bring a cake.
So he brings it in, and someone pops out of the cake. Garfield, he's spinning a baton, and everyone's
That
distracted.
would be a
He
really
grabs the
good thing to
check
have
and
on
runs.
board so we would do it. Look, something's shining.
And he
Grab the money and run.
Or he like looks at you, he leans over while Regis is looking away, but the TV camera is on him. And he's
I'll
like,
tell you, if someone told me that there was something shiny, I'd want to know what it was.
I'd like get up and like, what? Where? That would be outstanding. I mean, a lot of the theme of the sort of the conversation this evening dealt with balance, how to keep things in focus, not to let your creativity slip into madness where you lose everything, but to also not let your doing work that you don't want to do make you forget that you need to do a work that matters to you. If like your 9-to-5 job does not enable you to do something you think is meaningful, you're in trouble because it will alienate you. But likewise, the creative artist who hates society will be alienated. They'll be an idiot, but not in the friendly Dostoevsky way, as our class has been doing, which could be bad too. So, I mean, there's that fine balance. I mean, you almost have to have this intentionality if you're going to be a creative, but also as a person, you're going to intentionally make sure you do something that reminds you of the other side of the equation. We were talking earlier, I mean, one of the main reasons, like you had the Sabbath in Judaism was to remind everyone once a week, hey, by the way, God, the Sabbath of the seventh day of creation, God is meant to rule, and God is going to come back and rule over his creation. And you had that Sabbath so people would not forget about that. And it would constantly remind you to keep things in focus. In many respects, why in Christianity the Sabbath sort of loses its that extreme intentionality is the idea that Jesus is the coming of the Messiah, therefore you don't need that reminder that he's coming. But still, it's actually very good for many Christians to continue to practice because they forget that. I mean, Jesus sort of opens up the Sabbath to every day of the week because you're constantly reminded, and that gets into the brokenness and justification and things. But still, you can do the Sabbath or you don't have to do it, but if you in your own personal lives realize that you can't keep the balance without that intentional time every single week, then you should do it every week. And I think it's a similar thing. I mean, a creative person must recognize, which is very hard, that they are slipping into madness in the negative way. As the person who works 9 to 5 must recognize, and unfortunately too few people do it before their midlife crisis, that there needs to be something more. So I think everything you've said is very, very valid. And it gets into this odd sort of idea that one has to have almost a paradoxical situation where they unify them together.
That's what that creativity book talks about.
Oh, the creative food is brilliant.
When he interviewed all these people, he said, this is a list of characteristics that creative people have, and they tend to seem like they tend to seem like contradictions to one another. Mm-hmm. But one of the things he said specifically is like creative people seem to have an endless amount of energy, and they seem to always be working, but yet they always are always relaxing.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
I find that is very true of my life. You know.
Oh my goodness.
Like if you catch me on Saturday, it's
Very
like
delightful. Thank you.
I'm laying around, I'm watching TV, I'm not really doing anything. But then you catch me at other parts of the day, it's like he hasn't left that table for 4 hours to go to the bathroom to write. So I think there is this madness.
Oh my.
But the madness is, thank you, it's balanced. It's balanced by your own sense of, I don't know, like you're doing it because you enjoy it. Like when I'm writing,
that is the most flavorful.
I want to enjoy the process of writing.
That is the most flavorful
The
cake
thing I
I've
hate the
ever
worst
eaten.
is to
It's
be
just a dynamite. My
sitting
goodness,
down at a
explosion
table,
of just flavor.
writing something, and to be like,
Absolutely.
oh, this isn't really fun. And I know that's going to happen if I don't take care
Stop
of myself
giving everyone
for
else
another
pieces.
part. Like if I'm burn out from other parts of life, then I'm not going to enjoy the creative part. So like I take care
And just
of
all
myself
these layers to
so
the
I can
taste.
do both. So I think,
Just
yeah, I think like
extraordinary.
sometimes like I ask myself,
so lush.
like I've looked at my own life and I'm like, how am I been able to just like work, and not be burnt out? It's because everything that I'm
Divine.
doing is
divine.
self-fulfilling. Like it continues to fuel its own self.
Right. And you see, and I guess the point earlier that I so poorly relayed is the idea that that sort of individual that's self-fulfilled and constantly always working on someone, again, has a higher probability of innovating in the positive way rather than just adding bells and whistles, as we discussed. I can't really prove that, but I do know in my own life that when I wrote papers that came up with new ideas about Dante's Paradiso, but did it because I felt like I had to and didn't really care about it, it was a good point, but it really wasn't a great point. But when I wrote something of the same subject and wanted to do it and loved it, I sat there without moving for 10 hours and wrote a 50-page paper that really said something. So I think, I did the same. You get up and then suddenly it's 1 in the afternoon. You've been there for 8 hours. What in the world happened? It's a sense of timelessness, which he describes the flow sort of phenomenon as. Excuse me.
Mr. Finney, would you like some cake?
I'm going to get some of the meat thing first, but I'll do that in a moment.
The cake is amazing.
Wow.
And make sure you do get some of the meat then.
I'm going to eat. Sorry, I'm very...
Make sure he has a plate. Good. Yes, make him a plate.
But yeah, it's like there'd be times when I was in my room on my computer making music, and my stomach would start to growl, and I'd be like, "You idiot!"
Yeah, that's right.
Shut up.
You get mad.
I don't have time to eat.
I know
I'm
that.
so in this
I know
moment.
that.
I don't feel like
I
even
don't
going.
eat until it's like it's done. Like okay, it's done, and then I eat and read.
But there were
the rest of
times
the
where I
day.
had to like I didn't want to stop to eat, but I was like, if this doesn't stop annoying me, I'm not going to enjoy the process. So I go downstairs, fill up my stomach to shut it up, and be like, okay, now back to what I really want to do. And so I know my limits. Like I'm not gonna the reason that I'm able to have an intense work ethic is because in the other areas and other times of life, I make sure that I take care of myself so that when those moments come, they're enjoyable. Because if I'm worn out and tired and frustrated and angry and cranky, I don't want to create anything. And I want to create things, so I make sure that I'm rested to do them.
Oh yeah, I mean, and there's also both have the same appearance as work of writing the paper as would someone who has to do some report on the general theory. For one, the motivation is different and the drive is different, and that makes all the difference. This cake is marvelous, absolutely marvelous. It's got this coffee wonderful.
It's got coffee and it tastes wonderful.
It does.
What does that say about coffee?
It means you're ready.
No, it means coffee is
Means it's
horrible by
time.
itself, but in this cake, it's amazing.
Mind you, there's some
We'll
fresh
just make you a
organic coffee over there.
cake every day. How about just a cup filled with cake? A coffee cup filled with cake.
That'd be
Another
amazing.
friend who likes to eat things in cups. Oh yeah,
Zane.
Zane.
Yeah, me too. I know that guy.
Donuts, brownies, honestly, everything.
Yeah, I was just writing about this last night.
Zane?
No. So for instance, when you first looked, it's interesting. It was interesting, and this is like parallel I drew between the audience and the artist. So the artist, say a filmmaker, gets up on these 5 a.m. call times to shoot this film for 2 years. At the beginning of that, it looks like craziness. People are like, why would you get up for 5 a.m. to shoot this thing that people might not even watch, that might be a bomb at the box office. But then when the movie comes out, it's a success. The crowd loves it. All of a sudden, it doesn't look so crazy anymore. Not only that, even your parts that looked ugly become now part of the beautiful look.
Oh, right.
Because now people want to see the behind the
Sort of a
scenes.
justification.
And they're like, oh, wow, you were up 5 a.m. every morning. All of a sudden, it has so much more meaning,
Exactly.
too. Even the things that look like you in the moment, you were like, this sucks. Like, you're 5 a.m., the dude didn't load the film the right way, the guy's not on time. You're laughing at that stuff later. Like, oh my
Right.
gosh,
That's
yeah,
right.
it was the
That's
5
huge.
a.m.
That's
moment.
huge.
This dude I was going to kill that guy. You're like sitting next to you, I was
Laughing.
going to kill
You're
you.
joking. That's
But now
huge.
every success.
Oh yeah. Of course.
But
Well, that's huge.
And it's interesting because the audience, they get like the reverse. Because they get to see all of the pretty product first. And then they see the ugliness. And then it's, beautiful to them as well. But it's the same thing with the birth, The woman's in there for 36 hours in labor. It's not fun. She's like, get this thing out. Make it over. But as soon as that baby pops out and all the people come like, oh, it's all of a sudden meaningful. So it's like you have to deal with the present moment of what looks like craziness, looks like insanity, looks like
To get
toil.
that
It looks like
justification.
toil.
But I don't like
And if you stop, it will be. But it's the perseverance, the hard work, the persistence, which makes
Oh yeah.
hard
Absolutely.
work turn into rest.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sort of is a metaphor for the whole, you talk about justification in the Bible. The idea that all of this is strands of a greater narrative that will be realized at New Jerusalem. That's sort of the justification thing. You see how it all goes together. Like you were saying with the production, or, wrestling practice. You know where that you want to be. You don't want to be there. But then when you get to the state championship, you laugh about that first time when you're out of shape, and it suddenly becomes part of the joy. It actually adds to the joy. It actually brings out the joy. Very much that's sort of a metaphor for the justification that you talk about, that Paul gets into in Romans, because everything is a metaphor for ultimately the gospel. I think, was it Chesterton who said that? Yes. However that T leaves me every now and then. That every good story is a retelling of the gospel. It's a brilliant line. And it's very true. And not that I mean to shift, Monty, what are you dressed up for today? Did you have to give a presentation? That's
I
right.
had to negotiate over
That's worse.
in a mock setting over a real deal. I told you about this one.
You
company
did,
trying
you
to
did.
acquire
I
another
forgot that it
doesn't
was
wanna be
today. Did
acquired.
it go well?
No, because we didn't end up making a deal.
Well, that's because your deal was so profound and awesome that they didn't quite understand it.
No, it's because the other company was just trying to eat us and we got.
So you didn't. So you succeeded because you didn't want to be bought and no deal was made. Huh? Isn't that the goal? You succeeded. See, it was all worth it. All of that pain suddenly
It's
was
about
justified.
how you look at it, Manya. Perspective.
Well, that's true, but it was very unpleasant.
Was there a fist fight, Manya?
No,
Well, that's good.
But that moment will be redeemed in the
we just
future.
didn't agree on anything.
Well, I'm sorry. Usually I bring sweets, like this cake that Anne-Marie
I
made.
should've.
You should have. Anne-Marie could have made a cake, and then the negotiations would have gone very well. They'd been like, what do you want us to say so we get more of this cake? And then you would have not only been a millionaire, but made a deal, and
You could have used all that money to help impoverished nations.
yay. Yes, you could have. That's what you should have done. In your negotiations, you should have said, if our team wins, we're going to help a lot of impoverished nations. And how could they possibly argue with that?
Yeah, there you go.
Bam. Exactly. And you
What
win.
if you're in like a business presentation or like you're talking to a company that's trying to what is it, acquire? Is that the word?
Eat.
Is trying to eat the other company and it's like, you guys are just really greedy. Like what if you just like blatantly said that?
You guys need to go on a diet.
I'm like, yeah, we know.
You should look
We're
at.
gonna do this
You've
deal
been like,
anyway.
your mom will be disappointed in you.
Breaking out all this
Just sort of, and don't even break a smile. Just keep looking at him and be like. I mean, I'd be uncomfortable if somebody said that to me. I wouldn't want to eat your company.
That's
My
good
goodness.
because I use that technique on the road now. Because rather than get mad at people when they cut you off, I just give them this disappointing look, like. like I had so much hope for you. Like people, if you get mad with them, they just get mad back. But when you show you and they're disappointed, they're like, oh no, I let him down. No.
Oh, no. Then get out of the car. Like, let me buy you dinner. Let me just buy you dinner and explain myself. I didn't see your car.
It's okay.
I didn't know it was
What my
there.
mom does is she just smiles. She's like.
That would be the worst. That would be the worst of all. Like if I cut
Infuriate
someone
them
off
more.
and I look behind and the person's smiling and waving, I'd be like, I gotta get home and lock the house up.
It's like a picture of a grandmother, like happy. Just like put a cardboard cutout in front of your face of this grandmother.
Oh my goodness,
Like,
that
it's
would
cardboard
be the
cutout
worst.
time. Like, you know, because you can't muster up the.
I'm funny. It's so funny. I just don't have a lot of road rage. I'm
I'm
glad I
not.
don't. You know,
I'm
it's-
not. I don't.
I just don't care.
I
Okay,
don't.
so
As
I mean,
As long as
it's
safe,
sometimes
I'm not gonna get angry. You
right.
know?
Like sometimes someone does something unsafe. I'm like, that
Like
was
was
not a
it?
good idea. You know what I mean? Like
Like when
that
they
was
go off
probably
the
not
ramp
best.
to get over traffic and just land in the midst of it. Yeah, I've seen that.
Watch it when I
Right.
was
There's-
across like 5